Hey guys,
All
what's
right.
up?
That's
Josh, how you
it.
doing?
Howdy. Doing well.
So
Hey.
today we're gonna, and I'm lucky.
Angus says hi.
I have like a home office. It's really quiet. I actually soundproofed it, so, but you actually have interesting stuff going on in your house, and it's fine. So we're gonna be talking about doing research today, researching places to go find gold, because that's a big question I get from people, and you probably have gotten way more than me. Where do I go to find gold? So tell me like what your thoughts are on how you respond to that kind of question from people.
Well, first off, if you're going to go finding gold, definitely start. Your starting point would be go where other people found gold in the past. That's your by all. I mean, not saying you couldn't go out and find a new place where no one's ever found gold before, because I'm sure they're out there. But it's easier just to start where other people have found gold. Get started there, and ultimately it's about patterns. It's about learning how whatever area, if you're on such and such river, if you look at the history, you got whatever resource you can come up with at the local history on that area, which isn't, and it's easy to say, okay, just go find the history, but if it's a gold bearing area, there's usually some sort of history, either in the county or just there's usually lots of books in mining districts, in the areas around it. And then at that point, then you're starting to find out what kind of gold was being found there, whether it was low gold or placer gold, big gold, small gold, all those types of things. And you start narrowing it down for what you're actually looking for. What I mean is, like,
Yeah.
if you go into the beach, you're not looking for giant nuggets. You're looking for small beach gold. So then you just got to get your head in the right zone, and that's a good place to start. Just figuring out where people have found it before. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, and one thing, there's like obviously online stuff. I was gonna pull up. Let's just look at this one. So there's a lot of stuff online you can check out. Like, for example, I'll often go on Dogami, which is like our state's mineral overlords, and it's got county-based mining records. These tend to be a little more recent, like the pre-1900 is like, they didn't write a ton of stuff down. And I'm sure you found, like, you're in one of the oldest, probably the oldest gold area of the state. So
I think so.
how did they notate stuff in the 1860s? It was probably like scratched on a bear paw or something.
But it's there though. It's pretty neat actually. Like, maybe
Yeah.
not like the early gold rush stuff. It's kind of sketchy, but by the first 10 years or so into it, the 1860s, they really started to record things, and it's really
Okay.
fascinating because, like, at the time they were using high tech means, right? Which was like a county building. You could record something at the county building. That was pretty high tech. I mean, when you think about it,
It
right?
was new. Yeah, it was new then.
It was new. It was new.
Yeah.
And so they would take the time, and how many thousands of novels sized books have been made about whatever some dude figured out mining gold, about mining gold or researching, or all the attributes of it. But at the time, that was like high tech, and they were ultimately recording information, putting it on paper, and filing it in a place where other people in the future, people that didn't exist at that point, could find it, like us now, like exactly what we're doing, and go back and find it and use those as clues and try to figure things out. And then if you fast forward to now, it's kind of funny when you think about it, because ultimately, not just us, but like all the people that are like using the tech of the time right now, like what we're using at this moment, all this stuff can do the same thing. Will be passed along in the future. This is little thing. Little side note. I just kind of was thinking about that the other day. But needless to say, there is a lot of information if you start digging, you start looking, as far as like any one of these major gold bearing areas in the West. There's a lot. I mean, it's starting in the counties, and then like the old newspaper accounts. That's another one. Like, we use it all the time here. The local newspaper that was been around since somewhere in the 1800s, late 1800s. And they have archives that you can, sometimes there's paywalls to get into it. Sometimes you can access it, but you start reading the old accounts, around here, and there's like, so and so discovered, this big lead up on such and such hill, and and like at least it's a direction, it's a thing. And then actually, we actually did it the other day. We got found a little clue basically, and we're like, okay, that's kind of neat, and we like, well, let's go check that out, because the clue had it had a township and a range, right, where this clue came from. And so we're like, let's go look that up. And we went and looked it up, and turns out that there was an old road out there, an old trail, and there was a claim from a long time ago, right? Nothing current. And point being is that it was a lead. We had a clue. There, knew that there was activity there at one point, and there was a trail there, and there had been claims. So those are all the air marks of at least a place to start. And it's just about knowing what to look for, and knowing that any kind of information, it can be used, just how you would apply it.
You mentioned the size of the gold and the amount of the gold, and that's something that, like the way they recorded that back in the day wasn't like ounces, it was dollars. Like so and so found a $700 nugget. So then you have to figure out like what was gold price at the time and kind of do that. But like the size of the gold, depending on how you're looking for it, like we tend to, I like to anyways use my detector more than a gold pan or a sluice box or a dredge. And so that then makes me focus on areas where the gold is big enough to detect, because a lot of the gold that was found was fine, and they would classify off anything over, like half an inch or quarter inch or whatever. So like if they're just finding little match head size flakes and smaller, a detector is not going to be a good tool to recover it. But then you can maybe figure out, well, what is a good way to recover that size of gold?
Exactly. Yeah. Like I think you guys one time found some little pinpoints of gold, like up at Quartzville.
Yep.
A while back. And so that was pretty amazing, because that's an area that's not known for very big gold being found, at least in that particular area there, where it's more of a fine gold situation. So just to back you up your reference there, if you're using the right tool, if you're going to go to the beach, you're not going to be looking for giant nuggets, you're usually just going to be ground down fine gold, kind of as a reference. So being able to, and those are the things you're going to find in the history. Big nuggets, anytime big nuggets came out of the ground, and historically they were written down and the newspapers talked about them, and there's accounts of it. And so if you're looking at an area, researching an area, and you can't find any references of larger gold, and it's just measured in gold dust or whatever, a small gold references, then that's going to be a reference for you to use, going, okay, so that means this is a smaller gold area, more likely. And it's just little things like that. You try to add up.
What do you like? What are the signs that a place is worth checking out for you? If it's if it was a popular hotspot back in the day, does that motivate you to stay away from it because you figure it's been picked over? Like, are you focusing more on the gold rush areas where there was a lot of activity? Or are you looking for like the more forgotten, kind of like side areas where people aren't going to be looking around as much?
Well, of course, you're going to be looking for the areas that haven't been mined as hard or found, discovered. But most of it starts from where the old timers would have worked, because that's where the gold ended up. And that's kind of like the beginning of the trail. So, I personally get really excited when I'm driving along someplace and I see some old tailing stacks or something like, whoa, look at that, like, and then start thinking about where did it come from? Did it come down that gulch, or did it come down the main creek? Because that's your trail. That's the beginning of your trail. You're backtracking at that point, especially by the time the gold makes it to the creek, the bottom of the valley or whatever. Like, it didn't start there. It came from somewhere. And then you can, if you, that's not the same thing the old timers did. They found it in the main big creeks or whatever, and they worked their way backwards up. Then it's kind of fun to then start backtracking and using your skills that you've acquired, learning like, okay, maybe I'm going to go up here, check this, and you go up there, and sure enough, wow, look at that. Some old timer beat me to it. 150 years ago, they dug a hole here, but it also proves that you're on the right track. And then detecting around those areas is always a good spot, at least in like pocket gold kind of zones where they were digging.
It's funny, like I'll have a spot that I'll want to go check out, and I'll be like, this is perfect. Nobody's been here before. And then, you'll start finding trash and it's like, damn it. Like,
Yeah.
they beat me to it like
But it's
100
a good
years
sign, though.
before. Yeah. But so my thought is like the areas that were super popular, everybody knows about them and they're going to just go back and you're going to find gold there because it was such a rich area. They didn't recover all of it. So if you just want to get like little crumbs here and there, sure, go, it's like the steelhead fishing guys that just line up on the bank, shoulder to shoulder. Like, yeah, do that. But you have a better chance of finding something significant if you're willing to you do a little bit of hiking and a little more research and get off kind of the main traveled path.
Yeah. But the well-traveled places, though, those are good places to develop your skills.
Sure.
Because there's gold there, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure eventually, maybe 100 years from now, after metal detectors get even better than they are now, we may be able to say, okay, there's no gold left in this place, But for a while now, like every time a metal detector technology improves, I mean, just different days and different people listening, like gold's still coming out of the ground, even in spots that have been hit hard. So even if you're like new starting out and you're like, okay, I got my new machine. Oh, another thing too is like whether you're using a PI or a VLF, that's going to make a difference on where you pick where to go, as far as how the soil is. But if you go to a place that's already been mined on hard and you can find some ground that's open or whatever, got permission, and you start working there, that there's gold there. I mean, that's like the first step. I mean, it's really fun to go out to a place where you don't know where there's gold and then you find it. Like that's like really cool. But that's really far and few between sometimes. But if you like get out and you get started on a place where there's gold and okay, maybe you're picking up some trash and but you're getting familiarized and you're getting your digging down, then you do find gold. Then you're like, okay, cool. It's like a little notch in your belt or an achievement point, what do the kids call it? The XP points or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Experience points. You get its confidence, and then at that point, once you get that confidence down, then you're like, okay, let's start looking at bigger and better places. But that would be my suggestion versus trying to just start out going out. Because I've done it. You can walk for like 100 miles sometimes, up and down hillsides and you find some trash maybe or whatever. But I mean, like sometimes it just doesn't happen.
Yeah. A good example of that is, I've learned a lot from you. Like probably most of what I know I've learned from Josh Baumker. So I'm really thankful for that.
I'm thankful. I've learned a lot from you too. So it's like.
Well, but what was really cool is that trip I went on last summer to Eastern Oregon, which is a place I'd never been before. But taking the stuff you've taught me about prospecting and doing research, I was able to like locate pretty specifically, like down to a pinpoint on the map, like this is where I'm going to park my truck. I'm going to get out. I'm going to walk down here, and that's where I'm going to turn my detector on. And I found, like a couple of grams of gold, like six or seven pieces of gold, which was to drive that far, never setting foot on the ground, and to pull gold out and bring it back, applying the stuff you taught me, was like proof that like you can take this knowledge and just shift it to a totally different area and it'll still find you gold.
That was I enjoyed those videos. It was pretty cool to watch that. You did well. And because what you're saying is, I'm guessing here is that you were able to read the pit. Is that what you're saying?
Well, so it's more of like you've kind of shown me, through telling me, but also through just seeing where you look for gold, like kind of what makes an A+ prospecting location for you to take the time to get your gear and go out there and like the things you look for. You're not just randomly throwing darts at a map, and you're not just going where like so-and-so told you. Like you're looking for a combination of things, and I took that same combination, which was not super traveled area, like it's not the center of the district. It was off the side, it was uphill, and it was a little bit tough to get to. It was a little hard to get to, and it was on a certain slope of the mountain where I was like, there's going to be shallow gold here. And it proved that like just those things, those simple things, you could apply to a lot of different places.
So yeah, you read the pit.
I
You
read the pit,
analyzed
but
where.
from so far away, like 300
Yeah,
miles away, I was able to look at it on a
that's cool.
map. So that type of thing where it's like, it narrows down the number of places that I would want to go. But then there's also other places where you find gold, and it's like, why is this gold here? Like, it's just there because
Yeah,
it's there.
that's the tough ones. And then sometimes there's just like one piece,
Yeah, yeah.
and you find the one piece really easy, and then you spend the rest of the time looking around, and there's nothing else. Yeah, that's always fun.
So if you were like dropped in an area that you are super unfamiliar with, basically put yourself in the shoes of a greenhorn prospector, but with the knowledge you currently have, where would you start your search?
For just gold, period.
Yeah, like
Or just
let's say somebody picked you up and put you in like Alaska or Nevada or Montana or South Dakota. Like, where would you start your
I
search?
think just
Like, how would you?
start in the main river. I think, with the pan, just simple, with a pan, and then if you prove that there was gold in the main river, then you can start backtracking from there. If it, old timer kind of thinking that if you were, somewhere on the big river, like I spent a little time panning up on the 40-mile river, and so up in Alaska, and so I'm just imagining, okay, so I'm panning along the edge or whatever, I'm finding gold here, and we did, it was fun, little black sand, little flakes, and then so eventually you're going to come across the side creek if you were like just going upstream, right? Because the gold's obviously coming downstream, so you would be hiking along, you find a side creek, and you apply the same principle there. You'd be on the side creek. Okay, well, is there gold coming in from the side creek? Well, let's find out, right? Start panning that side creek, and either one of two things, it's a 50-50, there's going to be gold or no gold, right? And then so if there was gold on that side creek, you'd be like, get up far enough so you'd be like out of the channel of the main river, so you wouldn't get like some confusion there. Get up there a little ways and like, okay, so there's still gold in this creek. Well, let's keep going up that side creek. And as that side creek meanders up into the hillside there, if you've got a source that would be bleeding in from a bank somewhere, in theory, and I have seen this, I have seen in my area a side creek that was the same principle that I'm talking about there. The old timers mined up the side creek and literally got to the spot where the gold ended, apparently, because it's like a 6-8 foot wall where they just were carving it down to bedrock and tossing the boulders behind them. And the gold ended and they stopped. It's weird. It's just like this natural creek and it just falls off into this pit, right? And then sure enough, they went, well, where did the gold come from? And they, at that point, started tromping up the hillside and punched a bunch of holes up there. And apparently there were some pockets or something up there that's where the source was coming in. So the same thing, if you're, dumping some creek there, anywhere, if you were tracing up that creek, and, we're not talking about a simple little bit of panning, like an afternoon of panning. This is like hardcore, like you'd be, panning all day long kind of stuff. And anyway, you pan up that creek until you find the spot where the gold runs out. You can't find any more. And then from there, you look right and left, looking on both sides and start up the hillside. That's the same principle the old timers did it. And somehow, many times repeated, those old guys figured out how to go right to the spot where it was coming out of the ground, which is still mind-boggling to me to think about that, how much energy and effort it would have taken to do that. I mean, it's easy to say, right? Oh yeah, just go do some panning, right? But I mean, you're talking about dedication there.
Yeah, the pocket miners, from everything I've read, were kind of like the elite class of prospectors. Like
so.
They were kind of a little bit weird and like nerdy compared to just the guys who just wanted to go run a rocker box all day. But they were also the guys who would come back down with a satchel full of ore that they could sell. So
yeah. And I don't think they were into just like working hard mindlessly, because that's a thing that I think that happens with miners sometimes. They get caught in this mentality if they're just like, let's just keep digging, bigger holes, bigger equipment, we'll get it. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure that it works sometimes, but sometimes I think I've seen a lot of just wasted energy and, so.
I told you, I think on a phone call a couple weeks ago, like I finally started watching this show called Gold Rush, which I'm sure everybody knows about, but me, I never watched it. And I have made it through like a couple seasons, and they do that all the time where they're not finding gold, and they're answer
dig
to
their
that
way out of it.
problem is to get like a bigger excavator
Yeah, yeah.
and a bigger wash plant and spend, like $1 million on, and then like they don't just take the gold pan out and go like dig little test holes to find like, no, here's where we should be mining. So yeah, you can get blinders on and just like, I've even done that just out detecting, like, well, if I just stay at this one pit for 8 hours today and it's 100 degrees, I'll find something, instead of like, well, hold on, there's going to be a better spot to, to check out.
The other half of finding gold is also about having fun while you're doing it, not just
Yeah.
the work part.
Yeah.
There's a balance. But yeah, so I mean, that's my guess on why the pocket hunters were different, because they're just like, man, I'm smarter than that. I don't want to just dig.
But doing the like tracing float up the hill and doing the grid and all that is like, how long would it take them to do that process where the gold stops in the creek, they turn uphill? Like, how long would they spend, do you think, before they got to the pinch point where they started digging down for the pocket?
Amazing. Maybe someday I'll tell you that answer. But yeah, it's got to be an enormous amount of effort and time. I mean, yeah, how could it not be?
Yeah.
It's tough to pan hillside dirt that's all dry, and or even if it's muddy, whatever, you still got to pack water up, or you got to pack the material down at the creek.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a lot of work. Yeah. So hats off to those guys.
If anybody, we've got a bunch of people in the chat. They're mostly just
cool.
saying hello, but I would love to field questions. So I'm hosting the stream, so it's easy for me to read them to Josh. So if you guys have questions for Josh, mostly for Josh, because he knows way more than me, just drop them in the chat and he will do his best and I'll do my best. And I can talk a little bit about, like you talked about physical, like boots on the ground, prospecting with a pan, like going out and just digging, getting stuff and panning
Basic.
it. Yeah. So like old school, pretty easy to like, there's not much that can go wrong unless you're not finding gold with that. So I could talk a little bit about like the digital side of stuff, which is where me, because I'm more into computers and stuff, like the type of prospecting that I do, which I talked a little bit about the mining records, but another thing that's really useful is I'm going to go down to California because everybody hates Californians and I want you guys to go find gold. Geology maps can be a really good tool to use for prospecting. So different apps will have different ways of showing this. I think the Gaia GPS layer is way more detailed. It shows more faults, but the CalTopo layer is kind of like, it'll tell you like this is argillite, this is greenstone, and one of the things I'll look for if I'm zoomed way out and I just want to find like, well, where's probably a likely gold-bearing district is places where different geologies butt up against each other. So I'm just going to try to find this live. It's kind of there's Tahoe.
The ability to have the geology on your phone in your pocket is revolutionary.
Yeah. Okay,
Like-
so here's good. Here's serpentine, granodiorite,
That's a good combo there.
peridotite. So then, like, if I saw this, I'd be like, okay, there's some stuff going on here. Now I'm going to look at the topos and see if there's any mines, and sure enough, there you go.
Yeah, that's the spot right there. That's where that one pinched down and it butted in, right? That came to a point. Yeah, right there.
Yep. Yeah. So you can use like different mapping applications to do this. And it can, like, instead of just looking for the little pick and shovels on the map, or the mine, like, let me try to find one of these.
The icons, yeah.
Yeah, a Y on a topo map generally is like the add it with the tailings. At least that's how I understand it. Like
I agree.
So it'll kind of tell you like which way the mine is facing. And then you've got like dredge tailings will often be on a map. Let's see if there's any down here. I don't see any.
Older
This
maps,
is cool.
for sure. The newer maps, they're getting away from putting this kind of cool stuff on them?
Because they don't want you to know about it.
Mm, I, I'm guessing so.
That's
They
messed
want to
up.
make it tricky.
Yeah, so this is between Placer and El Dorado County.
And the little
Spanish
pick and
dry
shovels.
diggings. Yeah, here we go.
There
There's
you go.
that's
Yeah.
an X. That's a school, but yeah, pick. Oh, here we go. Nope, these are just dots. Oh, there's a cross.
There's
Okay.
one. There's one right there.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is what you look for to see the mines in, and these would be dredge tailings here.
Yep.
Which, let's see if we can see them. Oh, they don't really have that.
Just
but
river bars. Yeah.
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 So,
So then, okay. So if you were just going to pick that random spot right there, and so let's say you were researching, like, wow, here's a spot. I'm going to spend, go visit my uncle in the Mother Lode, and it's not too far from here, whatever, right? And you're out visiting, and you find that little X, and you want to go there. So then, what section was that in? Was that in section 23 or wherever it was?
This one's in 35, section
Okay.
35.
So then, yeah, then you could just backtrack from there. You're section 35 and whatever township and range that is. And then, did you go into using My Land Matters and that stuff yet? Very much.
No, that's a great thing.
Just
to
you could
yeah.
side note that real quick.
Oh, that's
Because then you could just simply find out, do some research there, and find out if that's claimed or not. And then if it's claimed, obviously there's no point in going there unless you just want to look at it. But
yeah, this is a great. I should have put this on the list to talk about, because seeing where the claims are, it's one thing to go find a spot to prospect, but it's another thing to actually
do it. Do the right etiquette. Use the right etiquette.
Well, and the legal etiquette, because mineral trespass is not something to be messed with.
You don't want to be that guy.
Let me just go down here to Dutch
so
Flat.
there you go. You can see that in all those sections there that there's 1, 2, 3, 4 claims in them. And then at that point, you can cross-reference that in the county. I don't know what county this is in. And then you cross-reference that township and range and section.
Yeah, it's in Nevada County.
And then you got to learn how to do the what's it called? The grid, the MLS?
PLSS.
PLSS.
Yeah.
PLSS. Which is it's just boxes. I'm sure somebody's got a YouTube video about it, how to break it down to learn how to do that. It's fun actually when you get into it.
Yeah. Some of this stuff, you have to know the name of the claimant. You can also search by the PLSS grid and list everything. But every county has their own system for this. So this is something it's going to vary based on where you're looking, because some of them don't even have the information online.
Yeah. I mean, and it can be very time consuming, but that's where you find the little jewels though. Sometimes we just figured one little jewel out the other day. We were doing this same kind of research in our area, and we're like, wow, that little spot right there is open. And so this is where you make or break. If you're serious about finding places and getting into it and going beyond just where do I go? Where's a good place? If you really want to start getting into your own thing, this is where you start right here. And look at those wonky townships.
I know. Yeah. Just a quick way to kind of gauge if the spot you're going to look at without getting into the county recorder is just to look at the quarter section. And so each of these squares is divided into 4. Let me there. So it's just an X. And so if I'm looking at a place in the southeast corner or southwest corner, maybe this one, and I see all the claims are in the southeast and north and northwest, then I know that whole quarter of the section is open. So I'm going to be pretty safe to go there.
It definitely takes a little bit of practice and some exploring to figure out how to really understand that system. Because I don't think, do they teach that in school? I don't remember being taught any of that kind of stuff. I mean, anyway, so once you learn it, and it just takes some time, some practice, but once you learn it and you can master this stuff, it's actually very advantageous.
Yeah.
To bring you to a new level.
And you can start doing things like filing your own claims, and that then you're small scale miner instead of just hobbyist prospector. So, but for people, so there's people who are willing to do this. But then there's also the people who just want easy, like, just give me the pointing finger, and I don't want to have a claim, and I don't want to be responsible. I just want to go find gold. And so for those people, like joining a prospecting association or a club, like I would say more of the local clubs, not so much the national. Like GPAA is great, but the local clubs are going to have a much better feel for what's in your area and actually put you on maybe some better ground. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that. Like how can you tell if a claim is worth, or an association is worth joining versus one that's just going to take your money?
I think if you went to a meeting, let's say you find, Joe Blow Prospectors Club, wherever it is, and if they're going to have whatever they've got online as far as their Facebook page and whatever they broadcast. But I don't know really how you would judge that. But if you went to that meeting, if you went to a get together or whatever, and there was a bunch of old timers there, I would say that would probably be a good sign that you had found a good one, because not saying there's not good clubs that have younger people in it, but it seems like in the clubs that I've ever been around, there was usually a wide variety of, from kids all the way up to old timers. And everybody always seemed to be welcoming. Like if you join the club and participate, and it's usually fun. There's usually little potlucks and they have raffles and that kind of stuff. And the whole point of it is to circulate information, knowledge, and camaraderie. And I mean, I guess if you weren't used to hanging out with minors and you walked into a minor thing, I guess you'd have to suck it up a little bit, I guess, and figure out how to put yourself out there. But for the most part, they're there to help. That's the whole point of it, and get people started. And that's what they want. I mean, that's what they want. I mean, I don't think I've ever been at a club meeting or visiting or they're like, oh, we don't want people to come here. I mean, it's the total opposite. I mean, the clubs are about growing in numbers. So I think that's a tough question. Like, because I don't really know of a bad club. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying there's not been a bad club or whatever, but I agree though, more of a local club than a national club, because like it seems like the national clubs are more like just access to claims.
Mm-hmm.
Like at least like I'm thinking of like GPAA, which I'm not dissing that or anything like that, but I mean because I always hear like, oh, those claims are always worked out, like because there's like a whole bunch of members and a whole bunch of people that went to the claims and just worked them out. I don't know how true that is or not, but I don't know. People may not like me. I don't know. I'm just repeating whatever. But as far as the local club is what I would, and on the West Coast here, there's, that I know of, just in this region, there's lots, and I'm sure there's lots everywhere is what I'm getting at. And yeah, just listen. Go to a meeting and listen is what it comes down to.
I think visiting the claims too, some of them will let you check the claims out before you put your money down.
Okay.
And like, I think I don't know if the Willamette Valley Miners does that, but there was one I talked to where I was like, can I check your claims out? And they're like, yeah, man, go for it. Just,
okay.
If anybody stops you, but you have to get permission. But like the ones that are more open to talking with you about it, and aren't just like, no, you have to pay before we tell you anything. Like
that would be a sign.
Yeah. So that, like, I think joining a claim or a club also, if you're just starting out, the people there will actually teach you how to mine. And that is something, it's not just access to the claims, but like those old timers will sit there, and if you don't know how to gold pan, or you don't know how to set up a sluice box, or you don't know how to, set up a high banker, they will just spend time with you to teach you, because part of the thing with the clubs is they have a vested interest in furthering gold mining and furthering whether it's a hobby or small scale, like they want to protect this thing that we do and make sure that it goes on to the next generation.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, that's what those old timers are there for. They're there to teach and pass it along. So I guess just suck it up. Go talk to the old guys.
Let me look at my notes real quick. I think we covered most of this stuff. Start big and small, use multiple sources, ground truth, areas. Don't give up. Don't give up after one visit is like, there's a couple spots where we've been to that didn't start giving up gold until we figured them out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can find, like, finding the ground is probably, I would say, half or more of prospecting. Like, just finding out this spot, I'm going to this spot, is like half, and then the other half is actually working with the dirt and getting it out. So you might have to try different things to find gold. If you've researched a spot and it looks good, don't give up.
And that's what it comes down to, like going to a spot where other people have mined in the past. Like, that's, it's there. It's the best place to start looking. And because, yeah, like you said, there's been lots of places where we've played around and gone there repeated times until we actually turned up anything. But we were just like, no, it's got to be here. I mean, why wouldn't it be here? Other guys have mined the crap out of this hillside, washed all these rocks and flipped all these things and dug all these trenches. They didn't just do it for fun, Actually, that's what we say. That's exactly what we say. How many times have we said that? Found a hole in the hillside. Like, well, they didn't dig this for fun.
Yeah.
So,
well, and it kind of goes with like starting big and ending small. Like, it's really classifying. Like, the more I think about gold mining, it's all just classifying stuff. And so you classify the area from a big mining district down to this, little 1 acre spot you're going to go check out. But then when you get to that 1 acre spot, you then have to figure out where in the dirt the gold is. Like, it could be shallow, it could be distributed through all the overburden, it could be right on bedrock, it could be in the bedrock, like if it's fractured or it's got cracks. And so you really have to classify the area then down into, okay, I'm right here, the gold should be under my feet somewhere, but specifically where? Like, what rock is it associated with, and what depth, and what am I looking for? Like, even plants can tell you. Like, I've heard that some of the old timers will look for certain groves of trees for where to dig, because that meant the dirt underneath was like shallow to bedrock, and so they could get down faster. So what are some of the things you look for when you're on the ground for, like, this? Okay, I'm going to classify out this ground, and that's dead ground probably. I'm not going to look there. But this other type of ground I'm really going to focus on. What do you look for?
just real quick, that
Yep.
analogy, your classifying analogy, is fantastic. Like, a couple trips back, you broke that down that way, and it blew my mind. It was good. I like that, because it does. It brings the whole thing down into scale every time. Every section is a scale. So places to look, like, for the most part, gold can be found towards the surface, close to the surface in the duff or in the top loose soil or in the sand. But I always start looking for it down at the lower levels. So that's like number one. Like, the closer you can get to bedrock, as far as a starting place, that's a good place to start. So if you found a pit or found your spot, whatever, cleaning bedrock. It also depends on what kind of equipment you're using. If you're using a pan or a detector or whatever. But generally, though, most everything is associated with bedrock. Sometimes the bedrock's under 10 feet or whatever, not quite as easy to get to. Or, like, if I'm detecting or panning, what am I looking for? I'm looking for exposed bedrock, because maybe that exposed bedrock right there is swept clean, and there's nothing on it, no material or no cracks or anything. But where that exposed bedrock eventually gets buried or covered up or boulders or something on it, you're going to find material that's down on bedrock. And that's a good starting spot right there, for sure. And then there, if you're finding cracks and crevices, whether you're panning or, even detecting too, that's where the gold's going to be. Or sluicing, I guess, too, even if you're sluicing, or actually, if you're any of it, right? Gold's working its way down. And that's a given. Everybody, well, if you don't know that, I hope you know that now, like, seriously, like, gold's always it's heavy, it's just the way it is. So mostly it's just areas with less overburden. I think you could probably, like, as far as trying to using your analogy of classifying, like, obviously, if you got 10 feet of overburden, you've only got a shovel and a pan. Well, 10 feet of overburden is not really your spot to look, right? I mean,
Right.
it's just obvious. So you're at that point, you're classifying, okay, so where can I look? Well, I found where there's bedrock and that 10 feet of overburden lands on that spot right there. Well, there we go. There's a spot to at least start looking, because I'm not going to be digging through 10 feet of overburden to get there. I just go straight down, at least close to the bottom. And that would apply for all methods of finding gold. Yeah, I mean,
There's a couple of exceptions to that though, and we have both found gold in other miners' tailings. You know, so
there's always exceptions.
there's always exceptions, and that comes with experience. Like the more you do it, the more you start to see like, okay, so this was an exception to that, but it's still classifying because they've ran all that 10 feet of overburden and just put it in a little pile for you to knock down.
It's true. It comes about just about time spent out doing it.
Right.
You know, like what's your couch comment? You know, you're not going to find any gold sitting on the couch. Well,
Yeah.
Sometimes you go out and you work really hard and you hike around and you dig holes and you don't find much gold, but your odds were in your favor, period, if you were out doing it versus not doing it. So, I mean, the fluke ones, the fluke gold, you know, just random things, those are probably the hardest. Like those are like, they're fun when you randomly find something, but at the same point, they're frustrating. I think I like them less. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you're just like, why? I mean, like, and then you come up with a theory and you kind of try to tell yourself like, well, that's why, you know, but you're like, it doesn't really help, I guess. Yes, you found some gold, right? You got gold to put in your pocket, but it doesn't really help with the whole mystery and putting clues together. So sometimes like I am frustrated by it when you just find a random, you know, but
I do know of a couple people who, with detectors anyways, they target dredge tailings because
like big bucket line dredge.
Big dredges. Because they were just chomping through pay dirt, and they would screen off material that was bigger than like that or so. So that I would imagine that would be super frustrating detecting, because you're gonna be going through acres of tailings in the hopes of finding that super rare big,
but they're like baseball size stuff. And
they're big,
sometimes.
So it's worth it if you find it. But like, how much time do you want to spend walking through this hot wasteland of just rock? That's
where it comes back around to finding your happy spot, where
right.
you're like, happy doing your time, and that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Good question though, or good, because that's probably the hardest part, whatever method you're trying to use, like you're not finding anything, how do I keep going? How do I talk myself into keep going? And that's where it really comes down to, like there's got to be multiple facets to your fun, your happiness in the moment, whether it's, you're enjoying time with your family or your friends or whatever, or you're just like being out, maybe you just want to be alone. I found myself doing that quite a bit. I just want to be alone, whatever. I'm going to go hike around. But wherever it is, you got to find that part, because if it's just like we said this before, but if you just focus on the gold, it's not fun, or can take the fun away, because you're like, oh wow, whatever. I mean, like I was miserable the whole time, and I I tripped and I fell and whatever, but I did find some gold, so it's like, I don't know.
That's why doing this YouTube channel has been kind of fun, because we can focus on like getting footage of stuff or bullshitting or whatever. It doesn't have to just be like, well, let's go find gold. It's about maybe making something that can be more than just gold prospecting.
Like I was talking about earlier, the old timers in the past, they wrote books about how they figured out how to find gold. We're doing the same thing now, or at least trying, maybe, of like, 100 years from now, somebody will pull out the old archives on YouTube or whatever, like, oh, let's go watch the old timers. I mean, the principles are the same.
Yeah.
Because the old timers, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, they were literally just learning and figuring it out on their own, making things up, and then basically just recording what they've learned, which is no different than what we just did. We've, talking about our experience of what we've learned, and we're, so, hey, miners of the future, go find some gold. Hope this helps. So, yeah, it comes down to having fun. I agree with you as far as, it's been a fun doing this channel stuff because we've been out there, and it's been more than just finding gold. It's been about like just a bigger picture, and it's been very, very enjoyable. And we haven't particularly found a big amount of gold in the last year. Like,
yeah, I think I tallied it up, and I think by weight it was probably a better year for me. I think I got around 1/4 of an ounce.
Okay.
So it wasn't a ton, but like for me, digging up the little ones, like I was pretty happy with that.
You're good on the little ones. Where I was checking out that ground just a couple hours ago, and I was out there walking around, and Sarah and I were playing around and just exploring for the most part. And I'm like, you know what? There's some little gold around here. Tom's gonna find it. I know he's gonna find it. Like seriously, you'll get it. It'll be a good spot for you.
We have a super chat, which is, we're both married, so you're gonna have to look elsewhere.
What kind of chat is this?
It's G-rated, but I don't know if this is a girl or a guy. Gamerbox says, "Such hunky men."
Gamerbox, I know it's probably. I don't know.
Maybe it's like a family member trying to prank us. That'd be.
I'm gonna say it's probably like Hannibal. That'd be my guess.
That'd be great. That'd be awesome. I could see that. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna heart it just because why not?
That's cool. Why not? Yeah. I'm glad we bring the hunk to the gold rated.
I got a couple comments I could read to you. Hobo Rob Prospecting says, "For me, it's about the hunt. The gold is just a bonus."
Mm-hmm.
So that's
exactly.
Good. Oh, this is a good question. This is a real question here.
Okay.
Fubar FPV says, "How do you identify areas that aren't open to mineral entry? I know of a creek like that, doesn't show on a map, and you would only know when you try to file a claim." I haven't run into that. Have you?
That is a really good question. You're right. So one way, like there's the wild and scenic runs of river, and the wild and scenic part. The wild part is not open to mineral entry.
Okay.
But the scenic part is. So there's these little definitions, and the government is not very good at defining this stuff. It's a really tough question. Obviously, like wilderness area, that's closed. In our county, we've actually gone into, there's a mineral board in our county, and we have requested from the BLM for years now a map that would define just that, to answer that question. Okay, so where are the open areas and the non-open areas? And the BLM has not put together that map for us we've been requesting it for a long time. But definitely, there's on the river sections, there's that difference there, and wildernesses, and we'll have to I'll work on that to try to find some more defining means of that. And I'm sure somebody's watching. If you got an answer, please, by all means, pipe up. But that does make it really, really tough sometimes. But the generally speaking, the wilderness area is not open, and they shut down the rivers, and that's pretty obvious on the map. And they are kind of sneaky though, because like sometimes there's a section of river that's wild and scenic, and then it'll change to just scenic, and it drops the wild part, and that's open. They don't make it very clear. The government's not super clear about that stuff.
So if it's wild, then you're saying it's probably not open for.
It's withdrawn. That the wild means it's withdrawn. Yes, but the scenic part is not withdrawn to entry, from what I understand.
Okay.
And so that's just one way of. But yeah, I always worried about that too. Sometimes, like looking at claims and trying to file stuff, like nobody filed on here. I wonder why, because that's why. And you can find out the hard way, I guess. You dump some money trying to file. Good question though.
Here's another.
Oh wait, hold on. Sarah said she has an answer.
Okay.
So to get the layer to know if it's withdrawn from mineral entry or not, you have to go to the BLM page.
Okay.
And when you're on the mapping system on the BLM's page, they have a layer you can click.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, I got it. So on the BLM page, there's a layer you can click to show areas that are withdrawn for mineral entry. So that's good. Sarah has bested our knowledge. So good job, Sarah.
That's fantastic. No, she's been going to town on this research. She's been watching some JT prospecting videos and learning how to research, and she's been applying that.
Nice. I don't buy it, but that's fine. Another good question here from Bob Peterson. Bob asks, is Washington State DNR land closed to panning in fresh water?
DNR.
Let me Google that real quick because I've heard that before.
Yeah.
It's the state trust lands.
Ooh.
Interesting.
I would recommend going to the state website. And so, like in Oregon, I know for Oregon, there's some sections on the road where it's state land, and they used to be open to dredging and all that kind of stuff. And so, just for a note, the federal mineral the federal mining law does not apply on state lands. Just to be clear on that only applies on federal lands as far as the 1872 mining law, mineral entry, and all that kind of stuff. And the state, depending on the state, however the state's mining law is that's what's applied to state land. And I know in Oregon, there's a section of the Rogue near Medford where it used to be open for all the stuff, and then they closed down dredging. It's still open for panning and the other stuff. The state still leaves it open for that. But at that point, I don't really know how solid the mining law, the state mining law is. I mean, it could be something they could just take away at any moment, like it's not like a grandfathered in congressional right is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I would say check your Washington State.
This is directly from dnr.wa.gov. Let me zoom in on this. It says, not all of these localities are open for recreational panning unless withdrawn. Federal lands managed by the U.S. BLM and the U.S. Forest Service are open to panning and prospecting.
Unless they're withdrawn.
Right, right. And it says here, many cities such as Everett and Seattle own the watersheds that supply their water. These areas are typically posted and closed to the public. So you do have to do your own research on this. It does say state-owned land. State-owned lands are not open for panning unless a placer mining contract for a specified parcel of land has been obtained from DNR. So that's probably what the answer is. So no, unless you get
they're open to mining, but they're not open to public mining.
Right, you'd have to have a contract with DNR.
Yeah.
Which is probably a great way for them to extract some more money from citizens.
Go get your permit to go panning. Maybe I don't know. Maybe that's what they're implying there.
Yeah,
I don't know. If in Washington, I don't know. I bet you there's many clubs in Washington, good clubs. I'm buddies with some of them, and I can't remember very many of the names of them right now, but there's ones in Southwest Washington, and there's ones out of the Seattle area, and they would have the answers to that.
Another good reason to join a club when you're starting out.
Yep.
Let me just see if there's any other
I think Dana
questions.
has some of that on their webpage.
Some discussion about Quartzville Creek being closed at mile marker 13.
That.
There was like a rock slide. There's probably like 2 people. So it was closed because a truck full of fertilizer tipped over into the creek. They cleaned that up, but then there was a rock slide. Because I don't know about you, but what?
What was the truckload of fertilizer doing way up Quartzville?
I have no idea.
That doesn't make any sense.
The GPS probably told him like, hey, this will save you $2 in diesel. And it's like, that
makes no sense.
Go on that single lane road with my 40-foot trailer full of fertilizer.
I did hear that they shut down camping and stuff up there, right?
That was years ago. Yeah, so people were trashing, leaving diapers. And, it was like Calcutta, India up there. It was really bad. It was just disgusting. And so you can't camp until mile marker like 17, which is like, there's no gold really until you get... I found gold in the reservoir, actually.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah. Remember that.
but yeah, the good camping is further up. So but yeah. So there was the truck that capsized, and then there was a rock slide, and I just went up to I went up to Kalapuya to my claim on Sunday, and I shot a video, so that'll be coming out sometime. But they have like the windstorms we've had and everything. Once you get up to the Forest Service, the road is just like covered in trees. Like there's
wow.
no going up there.
Bring a chainsaw.
Well, yeah, chainsaw and like probably a lowboy or something to pull out all the big trees that are down. Let's see, we got Fresno State Land allows high banking. That's cool. Other questions? Good plug on clubs. This guy says clubs mind the miners. I mean,
starting
yeah.
out, it's a great place to start out. And then after you become a certain level of miner, you can be like, oh wait a minute, I don't need this club anymore.
Yeah, it's just to give you that little shot of ether on the cold morning to start your engine.
There you go. That's a good way to put it.
Let's see.
To begin your classifying.
Hobo Rob says he's found good sized gold up Quartzville. That's good. Yeah, I've heard different things from people. Some of them do well, and then others, like, you know.
When I was a kid, my dad had a mining shop in Albany, and there was this guy. Just a quick old man story here, right? It's my turn now to do old man stories because I've been hearing them for a long time. No, but when I was a kid, my dad had a mining shop in Albany, and there was this guy that would come in every once in a while, and I was just a little kid just watching the scenery, and his name was Sparky. And somebody out there may remember him, whatever, but he was like the first guy to dredge all that good ground there in Quartzville. And he had jars full of nuggets. I totally remember seeing him as a kid. Wow. He was like, yeah, check this out. He'd dump out, handfuls of nuggets. Like he was the first guy to mine it back in like the late 70s, early 80s. So there's bigger gold that came out of there. I don't know how much is left, but definitely there's some bigger stuff here and there. That's cool. But it's not particularly known for bigger gold.
Yeah, and I've seen guys dredging up there, every summer. So I'm pretty sure that ground has been dredged.
I think so too. Yeah, it's a recreational kind of spot. Yeah.
Yeah. I covered all the stuff I wanted to talk about on research. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about for research?
Man. Yeah, there's something I can't remember what it is now. Like what did we cover? We covered don't give up. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we didn't. Did we get to the part like we got to it? We didn't quite expand on it. But like once you do find some gold, then for the most part, that's gold is found usually together in areas. Oftentimes, unless there is the random one which we talked about. But once you find one piece, starts expanding and circling is the basic principle, and there's no reason to not keep looking, at least for a while, on that one initial find. And then once you learn what you can learn, that's actually, there you go. So let's say if you find a piece of gold, and you continue your search and you don't find much more. Yeah, it's totally frustrating sometimes, but what did you learn? You learned what you learned, however that piece of gold came out of the ground or whatever the scenario was, whatever, that is knowledge. Then you could literally take that to the next place and you can apply it, to say the very least. And it may work or may not work, but at least it's kind of like it's like having a toolkit. I'm trying to think of a good analogy there. Mm-hmm. If you like showing up to a game, right? Do you show up to go play a game with the same strategy every time? Usually not. Usually you got to adjust. You got, your team, your opponent's different. You got weather or whatever it is, right? You got to have to adjust. Prospecting's the same thing. When you show up to a new site or, whatever, your equipment breaks or something like that, you got variables that are going to happen. So that means you're going to have different approaches, modifications of your thinking in your tool pouch. And that's something that we've been working on that more and more lately, like to be able to not just grind, like, oh, let's just keep pushing, we're like, no, let's take a step back. Let's think about this for a minute. Let's, take a drink of water and look around and try to rethink this and pull out a new tool out of the toolkit.
Yeah. And on that topic, not finding gold can teach you just as much as finding gold, because the fact that you didn't find gold when you thought you would, or maybe you didn't know, but you looked, you put the time in and you looked, either result, yes, I found gold, or no, I didn't. It's the same thing we do when we have a target and we have it in the dirt, and what do? You grab a handful of dirt, you run it over the coil. Does it beep or does it not beep? If it beeps, you got something in your hand. So you do the same thing when you take a trip. Did you find gold? Yes, great. Take that knowledge, bank it, use it for the next spot. If you didn't find gold, it's not like, don't get down, don't feel like you wasted a trip, because hopefully you had a great time, you made some memories, but you've also learned and you've empowered yourself with that tool for your toolkit of like, you know, this type of ground doesn't generally hold gold. So you can classify all those areas off of your, you know, mental list of places you're going to go check.
That's perfect. Yeah. Because ultimately, finding gold is a process of elimination. And combine that with that classifying analogy, it's a process of elimination until you find a piece of gold and you're like, wow, I just eliminated all the other things that were in the way to get down to this one piece of gold, or whatever it is, your gold you find. Yeah.
So I think that's a good note to probably close on. Kind of sums up. Anything else?
Sarah sent me a picture that came from Hannibal, and my dad's watching right
cool.
now. And so, hi, Dad, and I'm happy you're able to get in on this. And it probably was Hannibal with that snarky.
That was Hannibal.
That was Hannibal with that snarky comment.
That's great.
So anyway, I'm glad you guys are watching. Thanks to everyone for tuning in, and great questions. I hope we get to answer something for a couple guys just kind of yammering on about things we figured out, trying to figure out.
Let us know if you guys want us to do streams every once in a while, because it's kind of like low-hanging fruit for us. You know, we can talk about stuff and take questions. And I'm looking forward to some warmer weather, because then I want to get some sun on my back. It's been so miserable. I've still been like doing stuff outside, but I miss the like May 85 degrees.
Yeah.
You know, that.
Just about right. Well, on that note, Tom, I've been coming up with some new ground. Sarah and I have been working hard, and we've got some epic ground to go hit sometime this spring, whenever the weather gets nice and stuff. And we will be producing, we'll make some nice videos, to say the least, as far as some adventure. Like, we got some cool things in our docket.
That's great. I'm looking forward to it. All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
All right. Thank you guys. Good night.